How's it going, everyone? Thanks for joining. My name is John. I'm a software engineer with about 10 years of experience, and I'm in my React series. So we're going to react to a new career advice for software engineers video that I found. This is from, well, what is this guy's name? Let me expand it. With Marko. And Honeypot is the channel. So pretty good channel, I've subscribed to them for a while, definitely check them out. But I haven't watched this video yet. Let's get my reactions in real time and see if they earned me smashing the like button.
Questions on my channel is actually, how do you get started as a developer?
The answer is you learn JavaScript, right? All right, I'm gonna keep an ear out for this. Before we dive in, I also have a website where you can learn to code, sign up for free, pay what you can, unlock some additional features, and there's a premium tier too. Step-by-step checklist that will help you land your first programming role, learn to code and land a programming role. And so, yeah, you should learn React basically. So let's see if this guy agrees with that.
The programming journey from start to finish. And I kind of sometimes hesitate to answer that directly in the comments because I have a bit of a longer story to tell and it's not really the right format. But right now I have the opportunity to share that longer story. So I think I'm going to break it down into 5 tips. So tip number 1 is to sort of dive head first.
I hope he's going to talk about project-based learning and learning by doing. If he goes for that, smash! Learning by doing is the way to do it. Get straight to the projects, get a GitHub portfolio day 1, register the green stupid check mark, prove your experience. It's demonstrated experience. When a recruiter wants to say, hey, you have 6 months of experience, you have third-party proof. They don't have to take your word for it.
A lot of people hesitate to start coding even after they've watched like 20
Tutorial hell is big. This is huge.
tutorials. Yeah, you can learn the basics from a tutorial, but you only really build your understanding once you start coding and like facing the same issues and problems and the little things that people don't really talk about, but you still have to solve them in order to have anything done. And for me, it's always been the case that I've learned the most when I've tried to solve things on my own.
Let me give you a few concrete examples of things that you're going to learn once you start coding that you often don't learn in a coding tutorial. One is setting up projects, installing, using the command line. So if I go to Codecademy, they have a sandbox in the website, right? Or if I go to W3 Schools, they have a sandbox on the website. I don't need to worry about installing Node.js or installing VS Code or setting up my development environment or cloning from GitHub or creating a GitHub account. All of those things that I just mentioned are sort of abstracted away and skipped, but they are extremely core to actually building programs.
Even if there is an existing solution out there. So that would be tip number 1. Try to make anything, no matter how small, no matter how simple it is, that can be like a simple web page, or if you're not interested in web development, that could be like a simple game on the command line, like, oh, guess the number, or...
I agree 100%. The first project that I do, I call it the trial by fire. You can come over to my channel. Subscribe to my channel, by the way, while you're at it. This is called the trial by fire. By the way, if you go to the checklist, trial, it'll take you through the trial by fire. And it's linked right here. Okay, that's an even faster way to get to it. Wow, what a great checklist. This is an hour, and it goes through setting up your development environment, bare bones, not really deep, just getting started. We go through Notepad, coding in Notepad, and then over to an IDE VS Code, and you get to see why it matters. When you experience that change, you start to appreciate it and value it, and you learn it on a deeper level. A GitHub account, and getting a basic web page up all within an hour. It's called the trial by fire. You really get your first commit all in 1 hour. And it goes to show how simple a project can be, because when you push this commit, I think the thing is like 50 lines of code. And that's enough to be your first project that shows your starting point, right? That's not the destination. The point is you put a simple project in there. Don't be a perfectionist. Don't gatekeep or block yourself. Put a simple project on your portfolio, and that makes the next project so much more impressive, right? You can say, here's a basic vanilla HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Here's a React, and here's full stack. And you can show that, and it shows huge progress, meaningful progress.
or whatever. But it's just going to help you build on not only just your understanding, but also the confidence in yourself that you can do it. Because that's a very important thing. A lot of people, even though they've been...
He's talking about confidence and building confidence in yourself, and that's going to help motivate you and keep you motivated for making more projects. A pro tip here is to adopt a pet project. So in the Trial by Fire, it's a basic blog. You know what a blog is, right? Everyone knows what a blog is. That's one of the reasons this is a good project, is because you already have your head around the mental model of the problem before you even start writing any code. When you level up and you upskill to React and then to Next.js, a full stack application, you can keep this same pet project, which is you're basically doing the same thing, making a blog. That's called a pet project. By doing this, you already have a lot of the hard cognitive work taken care of because you know what you're doing from a business or product or feature perspective. And it really becomes more about a game of finding the right syntax and lines of code to write. If you go, again, checklist, one of the big things is going to be search. So learning how to search with Google is going to help you find all of those little lines of code syntax issues, and also using GPT. Use ChatGPT. And in 2023, it's really straightforward to find the answers to those syntax questions. The hard part is formulating the right question. But if you're familiar with the pet project and you know what a blog is and you know what the features are, you know what the user experience you want is, it helps you ask the right question. And then it's just it's basically a translation problem, like English to Spanish, except it's English to code. And Google and ChatGPT make that translation easier than it's ever been before.
Through university, they lack the confidence to actually go ahead and build things. The other thing that I would suggest is that you actually document what you're working on. Because if you're
using GitHub, it's going to be documented. You're pushing up commits. What is a commit? What is GitHub? GitHub is a place where you save your code. If you've ever played a video game, think about pushing a commit is like creating a save. You're like saving your game, and you can go back to that point in time whenever you want. So you are documenting your work.
Is to like break into tech.
When it comes to documenting your work, I'll also say this: you can create a README file, and that's going to be even better. Let me show you an example of this. So the commits themselves are documentation, but also we have this thing called a README file, which is a standard thing that you should include in all of your projects. It looks just like this, readme.md. And this is another way you can document your work in a sense. You just explain what the point of the thing is. So this is a Next.js portfolio. You can totally use this as a template and use it yourself. You can also access a deployed version here. I recommend your projects have a deployed version. Recruiters, they will see your resume. Recruiters don't understand code, but if you give them an application that they can click buttons and see that the thing works, you're going to impress the recruiter, you're going to progress on in your job search. Okay, and one of the things that the recruiter might know to do is to read this README. And if the recruiter hands off your portfolio to any engineer, they're definitely going to scan the README. So make sure that you have that there. It's one of those small details that can make a big difference in the quality of your portfolio.
A lot of people use that phrase. Assuming you want to get a job, you want to be documenting your journey and your learnings somewhere that you can use that material later if you're on an interview to show like, look, these are the things I worked on. These are the problems that I solved. And this is how I solved them. And even though they might not be perfect, it's better that you document, because later, once you have a better understanding, maybe you look at them from another perspective a year down the road, you know the things that you could have done better, then you're going to be like, in the interview, you can say, well, I know this project is not perfect now, and if I had more time or resource to work.
That is true. It's good to own your limitations. Careful that you call them mistakes, though. When you have a time limit, if you're given a take-home project, you're given a time constraint, it's not going to be perfect. And in reality, no project is perfect. Even if you had much longer, there should always be points that you're aware of that you could improve. One of the signs that you are thinking about the technical problem well is that you are always aware of points that could be improved if additional resources like time, money, expertise, if these were given to you, what could you do better, you should be able to answer that question. Careful when you're explaining the project, though, that you communicate that these are constraints, these are limitations, these are areas of improvement. These are not mistakes. So don't beat yourself up in your interview when you're describing your project. I'm going to switch this over to speed this up a bit. Let's go 1.5. Let's see how that sounds. Let's get to his next tip.
Sort of like tip is that you try to specialize, like try to learn one area well. And that goes not only for air.
That's true, but you don't need to specialize before you start interviewing. So get the basics down, start interviewing. You might get a job before you specialize. Don't think that you need to specialize before you start interviewing. And don't think that you need to specialize in the traditional categories like DevOps, InfoSec. These are deep competencies. You can create differentiation with small changes. For example, as a junior engineer, simply writing unit tests makes you stand out well above the crowd. Most junior engineers just don't even write them. And you might not think of writing unit tests as specializing, but it is. Getting into testing and quality is a form of specialization, and you can develop a career on that if you want to, but it's actually a smaller bite. You can think of it more of skill differentiation rather than professional specialization, like down a different career path. Those sorts of more mature, deeper forms of specialization will happen later as you go to mid, senior, and beyond. At that junior level, get the basics, and you're faced with the problem that everyone has the basics. So think of high return on investment skill differentiation. And that is specialization. So you don't need to go get a new degree. You don't need to go necessarily take an entire course, although a course could help. Think about the skills that are valuable, and tools like Indeed can help you do this. Indeed.com, it will tell you the skills that are associated with higher and lower pay for a profession. And you'll notice things like SQL, TypeScript. Unit testing may or may not be on the list, but I'll tell you it separates you in an interview. Also, accessibility is another big one. Being able to go full stack. These are some of the T-shaped incremental skills. Once you have front-end basics, where can you go from there? You can go from the front end to the back end. You can go stay on the front end and adopt accessibility, SEO, testing, TypeScript. Those are some of the skills I'd have you look at.
Areas, but also for projects. A lot of people think that you need to have 10 projects, 20 projects before you can show up.
You don't need 10 projects. You're not even going to be able to talk about 10 projects. If you get face-to-face with an interviewer, 3 to 5 is the sweet spot. And please don't try to cram the punchline of all 5 of your projects. Look at where I paused. This guy's poor face. I'm sorry. Sorry, Marko. Think about it working backwards from the job search and backwards from the conversation with the hiring manager. If you have 15, 20, 30 minutes with the hiring manager, you're not going to be able to explain that many projects. So really, you only need 3. You only need 3 projects. And if you want to do a couple more just for your own skill development, because, maybe the first one you actually don't want to bring up because it was kind of crummy, this like HTML single page blog right here. Maybe you don't want to mention that. Maybe you do because it's a great post showing the progress. So it's actually a great talking point. And the hiring manager knows what a blog is. So it's actually a pretty good talking piece. But I would understand if you wanted to make a 4th project because showing development on your blog skills, it's not that much of a flex. And having a capstone project where it really shows your personal passion and you've grown as a developer and the code is better and it looks better, I would understand if you wanted to pick your latest 3 instead of just having 3. But I would, at some point, say you're spending too much time on this. The opportunity cost of not interviewing and other forms of job preparation, like working on your data structure and algorithm, your leak code, and your behavioral interview questions, there's an opportunity cost, and I do see people fall into this, where they actually enjoy coding. It's almost a good problem to have. They enjoy coding so much, and they hate leak code so much, that they just make project. You need to actually get prepared for the interview. And so my recommendation is 3 to 5. I'm not very pleased with you working on your 6th project if you haven't skilled up on your leak code. And so if I'm auditing your job search and I'm looking for where are the problems and the bottlenecks, if I see that you have 10 or 20 projects, but you can't pass elite code easy, it's very clear to me that you're not doing elite code. And I'm frankly suspicious that these 10 or 20 projects are even things you've coded from scratch. It would seem to be that these are clones or tutorial style projects where you're copying code and you're not deeply understanding it. And that is a problem that I see with these sort of volume portfolios where it's like a large volume and low quality. I'd rather see 3, 4, 5 solid projects, like legitimate projects that aren't tutorial copies. And then get over to your elite code and then get into the interview.
For an interview. But that's not true. All you're aiming for is like one well-documented, one well-implemented project that you can actually talk about.
Now he says one can work, but you're going to have much better experience if you can show 2 and you can compare and contrast. Consider, for example, a developer who only knows React and they don't know Angular or Vue or Svelte or anything else. They're not capable of doing a compare contrast. Now consider that you're a hiring manager and you have 2 candidates. One knows React, that's sort of table stakes these days, and the other knows 2 frameworks and can compare and contrast them, show the pros and the cons. Maybe they know alternate rendering modes, client-side versus server-side rendering. Maybe they have some of those skill differentiators that I talked about earlier, such as SEO, accessibility, TypeScript, and so on. Who are you going to go for? The person that has 1 project or the person that has 2 or 3? I'll tell you this. 2 or 3 is not that much work. It's not that much work to get to 2 or 3. And it's a really good return.
At length. And you can go into the and you can talk about the bigger picture and all the decisions.
By the way, who am I to talk about return on investment? I have a PhD in economics, and you can see my work on SSRN. My thesis was on the topic of post-secondary alternative credentials. So I dealt with topics like coding boot camps. And so higher ability and educational prestige is one of my sort of more relevant papers. And I defined the rule that defines a high quality boot camp. So all coding boot camps are not created equal. And so down here, the last paragraph of the working paper, use course report rating 4.25 or higher on a 5-point scale, minimum 400 reviews. So you can use this in your own life if you're considering coding boot camps. And that's just to give you some background that I have some chops when it comes to analyzing the return on investment and the perception employers have. A lot of the work that I did is studying the perception of employers. In fact, like one of my published papers is attitudinal trends and alternative. That's the working form, but there's a published form. Attitudinal, if I can spell that thing. Let's go to Google because I can't spell attitude. Attitude trends in post-secondary. Preliminary. That's the word I forgot. So here's the one that's actually published in the peer-reviewed literature. There's a working form you can access for free, and then if you have access to like a university library, you can get through the paywall for the published version. They are slightly different.
You've made, so the people interviewing you get the impression that you actually have a deep understanding of that problem space. Nobody really expects you to have like a deep understanding about many things. A lot of professionals, they super specialize. And so pick a technology, learn it well, and work on one project until you're really proud. Don't try to like spread yourself.
Now, he's talking about going deep rather than going thin. This is good advice, but there's an even better advice, which is called the T-shaped skill. So you want to go deep in one area and you want to have some familiarity with adjacent areas. So again, when we think about learning the basics of web development, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you could go really deep into those. And maybe learning unit testing counts as going deep into JavaScript. Maybe it does. So if that's what you mean by going deep, please do. But I actually consider those to be different skills: accessibility, SEO. Maybe you want to go full stack because you're understanding API calls and then you want to understand how the other side of that API call works. These are adjacent to what you would be doing in your components, right? So I think the T-shaped mental model is really powerful, and I think a lot of your hiring managers are going to be familiar with that. Your hiring managers some of them are going to want deep expertise. Many of them are going to want sort of a balance of skills, and they want to see some width. Don't spread yourself too thin, as he's saying. How do you decide if you're going too thin? There's two things. One, is the new skill that you're learning related to your main expertise? If it is, then you're making the T because it's adjacent, it's related, you could reasonably use it in a project. In fact, you have used it in your projects. That's point 2. And point 3 is you can answer an interview question. LinkedIn skill certifications are a great way to demonstrate this. So if you're working on a React project and you think, maybe I want to look into design libraries or different state managers, any of these things, put it in your project, put it on your GitHub portfolio. Now you can put it on your resume. Now that it's on your resume, you should anticipate the possibility of an interview question. Get it double verified by passing the LinkedIn certification. Now you have the keyword twice on your resume, ideally 3 times. Now you're passing the ATS, qualifying for roles with that keyword. And by virtue of the fact that you've used it in your project and you've passed the certification, you have some confidence that you can actually answer the question in an interview context. You can also do, obviously, dedicated interview practice. There are services like interviewing.io where you can pay for mock interviews. I do that on my website. If you want to book a call with me, I can do mock interviews. And also flashcards will be extremely helpful in that regard. Let's see what else he has to say.
Two things. So that's tip number 3, right? So tip number 4 would be to get involved with the community. It's very important to sort of keep yourself accountable so that even if you're feeling maybe demotivated because you can't solve something or you're stuck finding a solution for a long time, you can ask the community or participate or just get into those conversations because some people will have solved it previously or they will give you guidance, and maybe you can give other people guidance and just keep yourself accountable to them by showing your daily progress or weekly progress.
The whole accountability thing is actually really important. I think a lot of career switchers and individuals learning to code understand the importance of having a portfolio, getting skill certification, updating the resume, preparing for the interview, and they don't realize how important social networking is. You can look at your interview conversion rate, your rate of application to actually getting the interview, and you can really see the social effects there pretty clearly. In cases where there's a referral, let's look up the number. It's at least twice the rate, if not better than that. Do referrals work? I don't know. This is not a well-formed interview question. Guarantee interviews. No, they don't guarantee interviews. So I don't JobVite. I guess stay away from that one. I think I'm not finding data for this, but I think they more than double your odds. Uh, 76% of job rankers extremely high importance. Okay, I mean that's the best data we're going to find right now. You can actually find measures of the impact on your odds of getting the interview. Referred candidates are 55% faster to hire. So you can find this data if you look around for it. The point is that social networking matters. And so the accountability process and also building in public and also joining a community. For example, you can join the Latterly Discord, completely free, link here at the bottom. I'll put my socials in the video description as well. But even just a community like being on Twitter or being on TikTok and using the right hashtags, and you'll see certain names come up, and talking to these people and getting involved in conversations Also, in real life, meetup.com is another good place for you to check out. Or, depending on the programming language, again, I recommend you start with JavaScript and React. There are meetups for React in major metropolitan areas here around DC. They have one in Austin and San Fran and so on. But there's also Python meetup groups, Kotlin, and so forth. Meeting people in real life can be powerful. These relationships will help you in the short run and in the long run. And they will help you in terms of finding job opportunities. So some job opportunities, before it's even available on Indeed.com or LinkedIn Jobs or whatever platform of choice, there will be individuals at companies aware that the job is coming up. Like I hear at the company where I work my 9 to 5, I hear about jobs where we'll be recruiting like next month. I hear about it with notice. And if we had a relationship, I might inform you of that if you were appropriate to the role. So it'll help with finding job opportunities. You can then get a referral, so it's going to increase your odds of landing the interview, ultimately getting a job offer. It'll accelerate your whole career, because in the longer run, if I refer you and you get hired, and then if you do a good job, I look good, or if I go somewhere else, as I refer many people, and they move on to various jobs, now I have referral opportunities over there. So it's this sort of back and forth, this mutual benefit. And when we have conversations, there's an effect of learning by teaching. So just by talking to you, I might not be your teacher, but by the fact that we're having a mutual technical discussion, there are teaching effects that go on. And those, when I'm talking about a topic to you, it helps me learn the topic more deeply. So flipping it, if you're the one who's looking for the job, you're trying to land that first job, just by talking to other developers, you're the junior, right? They're the senior. And so you might not understand the fact that you're engaging in teaching mechanisms that are going to help you learn better. So these are all reasons that the accountability process is really important. Also, just general communication and vocabulary. One of the things that distinguishes some engineers is just being able to talk about technical concepts. In particular, as you're making the move into junior or mid, being able to translate back and forth between English and technical speak is one of those things that is really useful to develop. And just having conversations with other developers makes that a lot easier than reading documents. In my journey, I found that sometimes I would read manuals or like official documentation, and I would end up pronouncing the word wrong because I never talked to anyone about it. So an example might be CLI. This is extremely embarrassing, what I'm about to tell you. I promise you, I actually thought it was pronounced CLI for like multiple months. I don't know how long. But I was like talking to myself. I wasn't talking with anyone. I was just like the CLI. So I'm sure you wouldn't make a mistake like that. But the point is that talking to people is going to improve your technical discussion ability much more than just reading documentation.
Progress and stuff like that, and that's really, really helpful. And this is one of the reasons I started like the Discord server. A lot of people like kept asking me to start that, and I was kind of afraid, to be honest, to delve into that because I didn't know how to manage.
We're smashing like he's earned it. Good
To,
job,
like,
Marko.
and, like keep everybody safe in the community. But over time, you learn from people who have more experience, like exactly doing that, like managing communities and like keeping everybody on the same page about the rules and like everything else. And then you just work through it. And one of the things that we do in our Discord is just like we come up with these like silly.
So get on a Discord. It's a good tip. By the way, I have an open source educational. So this entire Latterly.io site where you can sign up for free, it's not only free, it's open source. And so you can access the curriculum directly if you want to just read through it like a markdown file. One of the things that is also here is the endorsed community guide. So yes, I do have my own Discord. It looks like Marko has one too. Maybe check out both of them. But there are these other communities, including large Discord communities with hundreds of thousands of members in the React world. Reactiflux is a big one. Free Code Camp. And even off of Discord, there are influencer-led communities and there are diversity-oriented communities. So if you are a minority, or maybe you're a religious minority, maybe you're not an ethnic minority, join up with one of these communities And again, this is going to boost your ability to find jobs, get referrals, and maybe advocate for like a cause that you care about. So when you can align your job and your passion, what is the Japanese word for like aligning these things? And it creates a really sustainable and enjoyable career experience. It's possible, believe it or not. I know a lot of us are out there working for money and we're like, hey, work is work, and so it can be stressful, no problem. But it is possible to create a situation where you can kind of have a win-win.
To persevere. Like a lot of people get discouraged. I see there was one guy in particular in our Discord community who was like, I sent all these like CVs to people and they just rejected me. And I was like, okay, how many CVs did you send? And he was like, 5. Well, it's a numbers game. It just could have been the wrong.
It needs to be like 500, not 5. You should be doing 50 a week.
Time for the company to hire that particular role.
And when you apply, you need to do social follow-up. Don't just apply by itself on a website, throw your resume out into the abyss. You need to find a human that works at the company, and they need to fall into one of 3 relevant roles: a technical recruiter, a hiring manager, or a fellow developer. You can utilize these free and open source networking scripts, reach out to them on LinkedIn, and basically earn a referral and boost your resume to the top of the interview stack. Maybe make some real friends along the way.
Or maybe there was a bigger pool of candidates available at that time. But in reality, like even for the jobs that I had early on, I had to apply 1,000 times to get one freelancing position. And even then, I didn't feel discouraged because I saw other people getting jobs. So as long as you're seeing other people that are somewhat like you doing the things that you want to be doing, that means you're in the right market. And it's just a timing thing, or it's just a numbers game. And that also goes back to my YouTube channel. Like maybe even back when I wasn't successful doing that, I saw other people that are like me doing it. I was like, okay, it's not completely discouraging. And it's just persevering. So keep on sending those like CVs and just keep on working on your project, making it better. And every time you speak about it, you will notice for yourself that you are speaking about it in a...
So his tip is have perseverance. I agree with that. Marko, I wish you gave us tips about how to maintain that motivation. I think forming those social relationships is one way. Here's a really weird thing that you can do, which is you might have heard of social emotional learning. This is a hyper non-traditional learning strategy. Take it with a grain of salt. It's probably it may or may not work for you. But social emotional learning is a thing that works, and it helps maintain psychological resilience and motivation. But largely because of the emotional, because of both effects, the social effects and the emotional effects. But we also know that meditation is super helpful for stuff like this. And so one thing that I did is to basically just segment out the emotional part. Huberman talks a bit. You can check out this. If I remember, I'll put this in the description as well. But where did I actually write out the practice? 3 concrete pedagogies. Here's the concrete meditation protocol. So this might help you with psychological resilience. In addition to, you can just go to Google Scholar and check out kind of the classic social emotional things. But basically those are like we already said, join a community, make some friends, talk shop with them, right? And that's going to help your motivation. This one is something that you can actually do in isolation, which is more like a mindfulness meditation approach. And so check it out. You can develop you can basically harness emotion in meditation to foster some... So you can harness emotion in meditation to foster some motivation. Yeah, I think I said that correctly. And I think building in public helps here. So maybe you're not getting job offers, but if you're getting likes on your YouTube video or on your TikTok or on your tweets, I think it is motivating. And if you're not getting likes, but if you're getting comments like, hey, you need to fix this or that you can also view through a positive lens. Maybe you're like bummed because you didn't get a like or whatever, but they're giving you feedback on how to improve your portfolio, which is ultimately really helpful too. Incorporate that feedback, fix your portfolio, and then you can expect to see some likes.
More knowledgeable way. So when you do that interview the 20th time, you're not going to even wait for them to ask you the sub-question of a sub-question. You're going to anticipate all the questions. You're like, and I know what you're thinking about the architecture, and I know that this is not optimal, but I would use Kafka here. You're like, whatever, to gain so much confidence from you talking about the same things over and over again, that one day you will just walk out of the interview and be like, I just got it. Like, you know, they were just like so impressed, I could see that. And when you get there, you know, it's maybe not that interview that's going to give you the job, but the next one will.
That's true. You might be hearing what he's saying and being skeptical, but a lot of the interview questions are taken from similar pools. You know, you go to LeetCode and you pull out like a, I don't know, 2-3 sum or something. And there are variations you can do on these problems, but at some point you're going to recognize like the core principles. And you don't need to read the principles and memorize the principles. The way you actually incorporate this into your practice is you just do a bunch of interviews. You just do a bunch and you just flop on a bunch of them. And don't be worried about that. It's a learning experience. And there are a lot of jobs. So you can burn 10 or 20 interviews and you're going to have plenty more. Yeah. One thing that you can do here is every time you get an interview, write down a couple notes to yourself afterwards about things that you think you did well and things that you think you could improve on. Better yet, if the interviewers themselves can give you that feedback, but I often see that people often don't want to furnish the feedback to the applicant, which is a bummer. I wish they did, and sometimes they do, and that's nice. But you can always reflect yourself, and as long as you're getting a little bit better every time, it doesn't take more than 10 or 20 before you're like really good and you're anticipating the questions in the way that he describes. Okay, I think that's going to do it for today. This was a smash or pass. This was a great video with Marko and Honeypot. And I hope you gleaned some additional tips from my reacting to it. Thanks for being here. Smash like, hit the subscribe button, send the channel to like your aunt and your dog.